Hello. Happy Thursday. Yeah, it's hard to tell what day it is anymore, but it is Thursday. So I want to say hello to you. And if I have any issues, um, you don't hear me very well, just let me know in the comments and I will fix my sound. I'm just on my little headphones right now. So I'm going to just tell people right now that I'm on live now. So where it is right now, I am in Corolla, North Carolina. It's a little overcast today. And today, there's so much to talk about. I was seeing a lot of people stressed out online again, especially with Trump yesterday, basically declaring that he wasn't really into this idea of a peaceful presidential transition, in that he wouldn't commit to participating in a peaceful transition of power. And if that happened, it would be the first time since the United States was founded that that would happen. So that was a big day yesterday. And it was a little frustrating because, you know, the New York Times put it at 8:15, which is below the fold of the paper. It wasn't big headlines. And I'm sure a lot of you remember when Hillary Clinton was running, she kind of had the flu, and that was front news. That was front news on their paper. When Comey reopened the investigation into her, that was front news. A president saying that they're not sure that they can commit to a peaceful transition of power should not only be front page, but there should be alarm around it. I think people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around this moment, the fact that this moment is such a serious one. But I know that people are feeling it. Like, I know people feel the anxiety of this moment. So at this moment, it's time for us to really prepare. And what we're preparing for in this moment is not just the presidential election. We're not just preparing for the Senate, Senate elections or House elections. We're also preparing for state legislative elections. And that is almost as important as the presidential election itself. A lot of people will say, what, how? Okay, I understand maybe not knowing why that's just as important. State legislatures, the vast majority of them, whoever controls the majority in the state legislature, draws the redistricting. Now, that's not true for every state now. In fact, one state, I believe it's Michigan, they have an independent citizen commission that will be redrafting it, will be drafting their state boundaries, which, I mean, for legislative boundaries. And that's really exciting because they had gerrymandered there so much that there were some citizens there that were so disgusted with it. And they decided to get a ballot initiative on themselves. You have to go through several hoops, but that's something that you can do too. If you don't like something, you can get it. You can get a ballot initiative together. You have to go through city council process, and there's a lot of steps involved, but you can really change. You can really change your state, and that's what happened in Michigan, which is exciting. So they have an independent commission, and California has an independent commission, and that's what we want more of is independent commissions to redraw these legislative congressional districts. That's what we want, because what we had was Republicans redrawing these in such a horrific way that it didn't matter how many more people voted for Democrats, Republicans still managed to have a majority in their state houses. And that is really frustrating, because what it comes down to, then it feels like your vote does not count. So this is what's happening right now. I'm going to start with the census. We have 9 days left for the census. 9 days to do the census. That should not have happened. I'm going to turn, I'm hoping, stay with me for a second because I got to turn my phone sideways. Aha. We have 9 days left for the census, which is very upsetting. We usually run the census much longer, but Trump managed to get it cut down. So right now, we only have 9 days. If you have not taken the census, if your friends or your family have not taken the census yet, please tell them to go to my2020census.gov. And why do we take the census? We take the census because it allocates money, federal money, to our states. For every person that does not take the census in New York State, we lose $7,000. Each person does that. Other places like Montana, it's like $5,000 a person. It's a lot of money for everybody that doesn't take the census. So a lot of people think, well, it's just federal money. You know, we still have local money, state money. No. It affects all the way down. It really does. For example, I'm a chairman of my neighborhood advisory committee in Manhattan. And what we do is we get a small budget, federal money. They're called community development block grants. And what those community block grants do is that then we can find out what's most needed in my neighborhood. For example, when I was doing, I was going around my neighborhood and I had to do surveys. I talked to seniors, I talked to young adults, and I was like, what do you think this neighborhood needs the most? And a lot of the seniors in my neighborhood said, we just don't know where to go if, we don't know where we can go to maybe learn English better, or maybe we want to go to a place where we can play games or have something to do. So a lot of seniors didn't know what services was available to them. And so there are groups that were like, we would like to help seniors have things to do in this neighborhood. So my group then votes to see if we will allocate money to that group to help seniors. That is how those community development block grants help. They help your community specifically. But where does that money come from? It comes from the federal government. It's allocated out of the census, okay? It's allocated from the information from the census, okay? So that's what I want people to understand. So right now, the census helps figure out how much representation we're going to have, or where that representation is going to be, and where $1.5 trillion is going to be allocated, okay? So 9 days left. Please take the census. Text your friends, see if they've taken it. If you haven't, you have a responsibility to your community to do it. Okay. So this, like I said, the census then figures out what our representation is going to be. And so let me get right back to redistricting. Okay. For example, right now. So this is what some Republicans did. You can see this right now. That is a gerrymandered district, is a partisan district. It is a way to make sure that people who are in BIPOC communities, that their vote counts less. It makes sure that Republicans stay in power even when there's a majority of Democrats voting. Those districts are grotesque. We don't want that anymore. So what does that mean? That means we need to win state legislatures. How can we do that? Okay. I want you to go to this website right there, the dlcc.org. The dlcc.org is going to tell you which representatives, which Democratic legislative candidates are running, how to support them. And honestly, you can just give money to the DLCC and they'll distribute the money to help win these elections. Listen, Democrats gerrymander their districts as well, but nothing to the extreme of what Republicans have done. They have really gone out of their way to make sure that Black people, Native people, Latino people, and Asian people are out of power in their communities, and that mostly white conservatives are in charge of everything in that district. That's not fair. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's one person, one vote. And by the way, this is not just conjecture that they're doing it this way, right? Like, be like, Maya, are you sure they really feel that way? Okay, don't get dizzy. I'm going to turn my phone again. I'm so sorry. Yes, they were purposely doing this. They are purposely going out of their way to do this type of redistricting that is really in a most maniacal type of way. For example, I want to read 2 quotes for you. One was Karl Rove, and Karl Rove said, "He who controls redistricting can control Congress." I just want you to hear that. He, and of course he said he because he doesn't see women in charge of anything, right? He who controls redistricting can control Congress. Redistricting is really where a lot of power comes from through Congress. And it goes at least straight from the legislators to Congress. And not only that, one of the most grotesque quotes that I think that came out of all this was from a guy named Thomas Hoffler. Thomas Hoffler said, usually the voters get to pick the politicians. In redistricting, the politicians get to pick the voters. Okay? So right there, those were 2 Republican strategists that did not want people to vote in their representatives. They wanted representatives to pick their voters. And that's really gross. We can't do anything to change power in this country unless we also win back majority of state legislatures, okay? When people were talking about Breonna Taylor and the frustration of the officers not getting charged who murdered her in cold blood while she was at home, a lot of those positions, like from the AG to who's the head of the sheriff's department, or all these things, some of these are voted positions, some of these are allocated positions, but either way, it means we have to start making plans to take over at the local, state, and federal level. My frustration a lot of times is like Democrats will go, or some independents or some leftists, however you want to turn it, every 4 years are like, we want to pick a president and we demand a lot from this president and we need them to do what we want them to do. Like Joe Biden needs to listen to leftists. Let me tell you something. I've talked to some of those leftists and said to them, how many local elections are you voting in? Have you ever voted for a sheriff before? Have you voted for your local judge? Do you know how many positions are available that are making decisions over people's lives every day? If people were as passionate about voting in a president or not voting in a president as they were on the local level, so much stuff would change. There are over 500,000 elected seats in the United States. And I'm going to tell you something. Republicans plan for those seats. Republicans plan to take over Board of Elections. They plan to take over school boards. They plan to take over city council offices. They plan to take over all these, because all of these little types of offices that people say, well, those aren't really a big deal. They are a big deal. Each office is meaningful, and each office is making decisions over people's lives. Today, I had a conversation with Pratt, which is a university here. It's an art school in New York. And they wanted me to give a talk about state legislatures and the importance of the census, like kind of what I'm doing today. And I said to them, you only gave me 5 minutes to talk. And I want you to know something. A lot of people in this country have been deprived of of civic education and policy education. Okay. And so because of that, they don't necessarily know. I can't cram everything in 5 minutes if I'm giving terminology that they've never heard of before. So that is why right now, when I do these free talks every day, it's because I want to try to empower you all to learn more about your local elections, your state elections, your ballot initiatives. I mean, ballot initiatives are so critical. You know, every year I have someone tell me, Maya, I went into the voting booth and they had 2 of these ballot initiatives and I never heard of them. So they walked into the voting booth and had no idea that maybe their state was going to try to decriminalize marijuana that year, or their state was going to give returning citizens, the formerly incarcerated, they're called returning citizens, the right to vote again. It is so important that you inform yourself on all of these issues in midterms, during election years, because these people are making decisions about your life every day, and you may not notice it. This is what I'm going to end with. I know a couple of people that voted third party the last election. It's so depressing to me, so depressing. And I still don't see them doing shit right now, right? Like, they brought this spawn of Satan called Trump into our lives because they decided that they were going to have a protest vote, okay? And now they're still taking selfies of themselves. They're like, make sure you mask up, like COVID safe life, all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing to change any of this? Are you helping register people to vote? Are you helping to pay off the fees for reentrance so they can vote in Florida instead of the poll tax that's been put on them? Right? What are you doing? So to me, this is what I'm going to leave you with. If you see people like that, shame them. Shame them. Because people need to recognize that this is a serious time and they need to get to work. We only have 40 days or less. I didn't check. I always check every day, but it's about 40 days left of voting. Voting doesn't start November 3rd. Voting ends November 3rd. Okay? So that's what I'm going to leave you with. I'm going to leave you with the fact that we need to start paying attention to state legislative elections. We need to finish filling out the census. We need to support legislative elections by going to dlcc.org. I gave you that information today. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay? Thanks for watching.